Well, hello, sports fans. This is Larry Eater in San Jose, California. I'm with Stuart Wire, who's in Oxford, England, and it's, 9:30 over there?
9:30 in the evening, absolutely.
Yes, and this is Athletics Chat number 8. Stuart has put up with me now for 8 weeks, and there isn't an international incident. He didn't call in the mayor of London or Boris Johnson. Thank you, Stuart. I appreciate that, But
well, I think Boris may be a little bit busy because he's trying to take us out of the European community and get rid of COVID-19 at the same time.
He's a busy man. Man. Then we'll have to talk about the mayor of London. I kind of like him. There has been some controversy in your neck of the woods. Bianca Williams. And I hear that that's a big deal over there. Can you tell us what's happening?
Well, Bianca Williams, who is a British sprinter, particularly successful in relays. I mean, she's won gold medals in most of the major events in relay. She and her partner, Ricardo dos Santos, who is a good 400-meter runner, were on their way back from practice. They're coached both by Linford Christie, when they were stopped by the police.
Okay.
Allegedly for a traffic offense. And then the police decided, now, this wasn't just one policeman, but about 5 of them.
Wow.
And they then decided they wanted to search the car. And Bianca has a daughter who is just 3 months old, and who was in the car. And the police were physically dragging her out of the car and handcuffing her. Now think about this. Bianca Williams is about 5'4", and there are 5 large policemen and women.
Yes.
So exactly what threat she was posing to them.
Yes.
Anyway, this has been a major news story. And in the end, the commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, i.e. the top police person in London, offered a kind of apology. I'm sorry for the distress caused.
Wow.
But previous to that, the police had said that they had examined it and no misconduct had occurred.
Wow.
Bianca had the foresight to film the entire thing. And so you can actually see her screaming, "I want to stay with my baby," while she's been dragged out of the car and handcuffed. And that I have committed motoring offences, but I didn't get dragged out of the car and I didn't get handcuffed. And Linford Christie said quite blatantly, the reason this happens is because they're black, because they're young and black and driving an expensive car. And so the race aspect of it, particularly at this time of sensitivity, with the Black Lives Matter campaign, which incidentally at the moment, all our soccer matches start with all the players and the match officials taking a knee.
Wow.
So for the police to do this to a relatively well-known athlete was a bit embarrassing for them, and particularly their inability to admit that they could have handled it better.
I'm going to have you keep talking for a second. I'm just grabbing my water. You had me put up a piece on Dina Asher-Smith last week, which I thought was very well done. Would you like to share that with the crowd for 1 second?
Well, again, Dina Asher-Smith had been asked a few questions about, have you ever experienced this? And some of the examples of racism that she has experienced were really, for me, were quite shocking. She says, I go into an expensive store and ask to try on a jacket, and the sales assistant says to me, it's very expensive. Are you sure you can afford it?
Wow.
And at times, she said, I've gone into an expensive store and found that one of the security men is following me around. She says, I go to a gala event and everyone assumes I'm a waitress because I'm young and black.
Oh my God.
I have had the experience of getting into an elevator and a white person gets out immediately I step in. And I had no idea that people like that, someone like Dina, who's bright, intelligent, successful, but she still feels that she experiences this all the time.
Yeah. I thought it was quite telling the way her parents advised her that she would have to be better. She had to, stay above reproach. And I just didn't. I was under the belief that didn't happen in the UK.
Well, I was not as aware of it until recently. It is horrifying.
What I'd like you to do a piece on Bianca for us, please. I think our readers would find that of interest.
Okay.
Talk to me about, and we're sorry about how Bianca's been treated. That's just terrible. I just think it's. I know a lot of athletes in the U.S. who had to deal with that. One of my son's buddies, an African American, who moved out to California, bought a new car, and I told him he bought a used BMW, and I told him he would be stopped, and he said, "Why?" For driving while black. And because I coached African American athletes, and every one of them, the school's in a wealthy neighborhood. They were stopped at one time or another.
But that's exactly the situation, because Bianca's partner, Ricardo, I just thought was so gracious. I mean, he said, "Well, I used to have a normal car, but since I got the BMW or the Mercedes, I've been stopped probably 10 to 15 times."
Wow.
I mean, I would have thought that the police, since they have on the computer records, that they could actually check and not keep stopping the same car. But he just said, "No, this is my normal." I just thought it was incredibly gracious to say that.
Yeah. Oh, I think so too.
Yeah.
One of our friends, Sally Pearson, has a new baby.
Ruby Elizabeth.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. I mean, Sally is one of those athletes I watched a lot and really liked. I mean, the last time I spoke to her was at the World Relays last year. And I went up to her in the lobby and said, "Could I have 10 minutes with you?" And she said, "Sure, tomorrow morning after breakfast." And, sometimes athletes say that and they have no intention of doing it, but they get you off the back. But of course, there was Sally giving me as long as I wanted.
Wow.
Sadly, her career ended a little bit prematurely because, as she put it, her body told her it had had enough. But she said she's happy, she's ready to move on. Her husband has tended to travel with her a lot, and she's got new projects.
Yeah.
So obviously an ex-Olympic champion, world champion. I mean, it was great that Dawn Harper Nelson, who came second to her in London 2017, said, "I sensed there was somebody just ahead of me," and looked across and said, "It had to be Sally." The two old ladies finishing first, with all the young, fast sprint hurdlers. It was the two old ladies, as Dawn Harper Nelson put it, who came first and second.
Well, I just thought Sally's career was amazing, and her comeback was tremendous. And I always think about how many times I would see her in Maury Plant with her, getting her to crack up. We lost him a year ago, and he was a real character. And he was, I believe, at the end of his life, he was the only athlete. He was still representing her, and but yeah, she was a lot of fun. I remember how she handled the Australian Federation, which was a rather challenging, and I'm not sure I would have had the patience with them, but she always showed class. Yeah. And so, well, that's awesome. That's where we'll be thinking about her.
Yeah.
The Zurich Inspiration Games. Talk to me. What do you think?
Well, it's actually quite exciting. Let me tell you about the 150-meter race for women.
Sure.
We have got Kambunji from Switzerland, who's running in Zurich.
Yep.
And against her is Alison Felix, who's running in California. And against the two of them is Shawnee Miller-Weibo, who's
Wow.
running in Florida. And through the wonders of Swiss timing,
Yes.
they are going to have linked guns at the 3 venues.
Wow.
And 2 minutes afterwards, they will have edited it all together as if they're running side by side.
That's cool. That's cool. I'm looking forward to that. So.
And I mean, it was really funny because I went to the presser, and Christian Taylor was asked, will you be able to jump if you don't have someone clapping for you because there's no spectators?
Yeah.
And he said, well, Sam Kendricks and Sandy Morris are pole vaulting in the same venue as me.
Uh-huh.
So I'm hoping they'll clap for me and I'll clap for them.
That's cool. That's cool.
So, I mean, basically, there are 3 field events, 5 races, and people are competing in the Netherlands, Portugal, different locations in the US, France, Zurich, and Sweden.
That's cool.
And it's all been put together. There's, as I say, there's 8 events with 3 athletes in each.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll get some stuff up tonight and remind people of the times and everything as well. After Zurich, so have you heard anything more about the Hamburg Marathon? Is it still on? Is that what we're hearing right now?
I haven't heard anything definite, but Germany certainly is ahead of most countries in Europe in terms of, the legendary German efficiency.
Yes.
That in terms of how they're managing COVID.
Yeah.
But then, of course, they did have an outbreak in a factory. So it just shows that it can come back. Sure.
Yeah, it hasn't gone away in the U.S. It's crazy time over here right now. So it's just, we, for the big holiday, we drove around a little bit and no one was out. It was just, it was amazing. So thank God that people stayed in. What's going on with London?
London Marathon. Well, I don't see it taking place, but as with the Diamond League, the Birmingham Diamond League, which is actually in Gateshead, that hasn't been called off yet. We are definitely doing our national championships, I'm told. And that is the first weekend in September. But I don't know how they're going to do that, because either you have to restrict the number of athletes by putting the entry standards higher, or else you're going to have an awful lot of prelims. Yeah. Because I can't see you can have more than 4 people running in any race.
Yeah.
And of course, what you need to understand, this is our national championships, and the first 2 will automatically qualify for selection for the championship. Oh, sorry, there isn't a championship.
Are you going to go? Will you go to the championships?
Probably not, because I am old. Now, I didn't know I was old, but our government has told me that I'm old.
Wow, that's really nice of them.
Yeah, because I am in the at-risk category, so I think it's pretty unlikely that I will go. It's interesting they're doing this. I gather it's going to be on live television, and because people don't get paid to go, then and don't have accommodation provided, so therefore they only have to cover the cost of running the event, which presumably the TV money will do.
Yeah.
But again, the CEO told me that doing a Diamond League with no spectator income simply is not viable because of all the costs they have of bringing in the athletes.
Sure.
So while it has not yet been called off, I'm certain that the Birmingham Gateshead Diamond League will not take place. And I mean, all you could do with the marathon is to have an elite-only race, which would be totally different. The fact that the Ryder Cup Golf has called itself off today because they say an event without spectators is not an event.
Yeah.
And, the course, not surprisingly, for the marathon is 26 miles long. How do you stop spectators gathering?
Yeah, I don't get that one at all.
So I can't see it happening. I think they're just trying to keep it as long as possible, just in the hope that suddenly some things might change. But really, Premier League Soccer has actually said that they are ready to play all of next season, which would be September to May, without spectators. That they are planning for that, because they don't think that things are going to change anytime soon. And so, I think the London Marathon people are just hoping against hope that something will change.
Mm-hmm.
But I just can't see it happening.
What do you think about so our fearless leader, Seb Coe, said something the other day that I thought was coming out of the 1950s. He said that politics should not influence our sport. And I was rather curious if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, it's a nice thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't suppose that any country that's ever trying to decide whether to host an Olympics or anything like that would ever let politics influence that decision.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird. I don't, know what he's thinking, because obviously right now, with Black Lives Matter, with a lot of the things going on in the U.S., how do you not? Now, I also get what he was worried about is an athlete from the Bahamas called for a boycott of all events in China. Because of China taking over Hong Kong. And I understand that there were athletes that wanted a boycott of the U.S. during the Vietnam War.
Yeah. And of course, the U.S. Boycotted Moscow in 1980.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's that aspect as well. And, the whole issue with whether Russia is going to be kicked out, and in a way, it's felt that's really the state as much as the Track and Field Federation.
Mm-hmm.
But you see, another interesting one. A few months back, the IOC announced that they would not allow any religious or political protests or demonstrations on Olympic property, like at medal ceremonies and so on. But now you see some athletes are saying, well, hang on, Black Lives Matter is not political. That's a moral stand that we are taking, and that should be excluded. And certainly here, I would say there's a certain groundswell for that. And the fact that Premier League Soccer, every game starts that way, and all the players now have the Black Lives Matter on the uniform, and that's totally 100% been player driven.
Well, in the U.S.,
athlete driven.
The WNBA has a club in Atlanta, and one of the managers of the club or owners of the club is a conservative Republican who has come out and said that they're wearing Black Lives Matter pins, and he doesn't want the women to do that because he says Black Lives is anti-religion, all that stuff, and it's not. Someone made a comment about them portraying Jesus as a white European. That was the issue. And more than likely, he was looked like, my Palestinian friend who I go to Mr. Falafel with and Art. And so, which I do recall a funny dinner one time when I was with somebody, and she told me she had this lovely drawing of Jesus, and she showed me a picture of it. It was an Albert Dürer drawing. And I said, well, actually, Jesus probably looked like the mechanic that you just dropped your car off with. And she was insulted. I found it humorous. But it's so much of our perception of things. I wanted to ask you a few other ones today. Best athlete ever to interview. And you can have a tie if you've got a few that you really, really like. I'm just curious.
I think one I would definitely mention is Tiana Bortoletta. Now, I had arranged to interview her in Stockholm a few years ago, and we missed each other. And the following day, she came looking for me.
Wow.
Because she had promised to do an interview. And I thought that was so much beyond the call of duty.
Mm-hmm.
And she is also an athlete who is very honest.
Yes.
And, faces up to problems and talks about them and isn't bland.
Yes.
Another one that I have loved talking to is Shelley-Ann Fraser-Price.
Yes.
Now, I was the last one to speak to her at Glasgow, and I thought I was going to be there until next week because she was just giving everyone so much time, answering every question in full.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that she's another one who's great, and somebody who understands. I think Shelley-Ann, is somebody who understands that the sport has given her a lot and that she has an obligation to give back to it.
I like that. My best interview of all times, my favorite of all favorites was Emil Zatopek. That was in 1991. My most unique was Carl Lewis's mother, who told me the story about being a young black woman going to a track meet in Ohio, and the dumpy hotel they put her in put all the black athletes in, and the nice hotel they put the white athletes in across the street. And I got that interview thanks to Carl. He introduced me to his mom, and he said, "You need to interview my mom. She has a story to tell you about track in the 1950s. And it was amazing. There's so many good athletes now. I love Christian Taylor.
Yes.
And I have to say, Christian is terribly articulate. The best medal interview I've ever witnessed was Sam Kendricks in Doha. 12 minutes by himself, and he put the pole vault in perspective. And then the guys came in, Piotr and Mondo, and it was wonderful. And the funny thing was, Piotr looked over at me and said, "Okay, Larry, I want a question from you." And they were all getting tired of the drug questions. And they wanted questions about their competition. And I think that was, I love the post-event interviews, and I'd gone to them for 10, 15 years. Then my son, Adam, said, "Dad, you're the only one asking questions here, so why don't you come to all of them?" So he would, at these poor things, he goes and he sets up his camera and he guards my seats. He gets to watch some of the meet, but he knows that's where our, meat and potatoes is. And we have a blast, and it's, and Doha, as you remember, was so god awful hot. It was craziness, but the athletes, we've got such a wonderful generation of athletes.
I think
go ahead.
I did say, I think also, without giving us too much blowing our own trumpet, in a way, how you treat an athlete is how they will respond to you. And, if the athlete thinks they're just going to ask me about drugs, they're just going to ask me what I think about Christian Coleman, and I really don't want to talk about that. They're just going to ask me if Russia should be banned. I don't want to talk about that. Or if, like you and me, you go in and say, well, just tell us about that race. Tell us about what your approach was. What training have you been doing that has changed the way you run? Then I think they engage much more. And I mean, I've had athletes say to me, look, I'll talk to you anytime because I know that you'll write it up properly.
Yeah. No. Who's the funniest athlete you've ever interviewed?
Last year, I was doing a series on world champions before Doha, defending world champions. And I had one question that I asked all of them. The question was, what's it like to be introduced as the reigning world champion? And I asked the French 800-meter runner, Pierre-Ambroise Bossé, and he just looked at me and said, I don't introduce myself as the world champion. I introduce myself as the crazy guy who can drink a pint of beer in 3 seconds.
That's something. That's a way to be introduced.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What's the best event for a presser?
Well, I think you will be surprised at the answer I'm going to give to that one, because the best one I've been to recently was at the Golden Gala, Rome, last year. And I mean, bless them, the Italians do many wonderful things, and pizza and pasta are among the best. But organization is not what I would associate with Rome.
Yeah.
But the day before the presser, I had gone to one of the media team and said, look, I have a list of athletes I'd like to speak to after the presser tomorrow. And I went to the event. And to my amazement, there was that man with my list telling me that I was going to get everybody, when I was going to get them, and he made it happen. Wow. And so to me, that was that was amazing. I mean, I think in terms of formal pressers, some of them are killed by the moderator who thinks he knows everything and who asks esoteric questions to which only he is interested in the answer, or in order to demonstrate his knowledge.
Sure.
And so, I mean, I think basically, if members of the press have come, they should have an opportunity to ask as many questions as they can.
Yeah.
Rather than having a moderator asking questions that he thinks people might be interested in.
Veldklasse treats us pretty well. I always thought I just know him as Johnny, the communications guy in Stockholm is really earnest, and he always made a point of making sure I got to ask questions. And then, you know what? I really love the British athletics pressers because they give us access, and they always get a group. I think the funniest one was Greg Rutherford and Valerie Adams and David Rudisha. And Greg and Valerie were laughing so hard that even David laughed. And, you know, he was always so polite and just very genteel. And
was that the one after the Olympics where Valerie had come second to a drugs cheat?
Yes.
And she was asked how she felt about the drugs cheat. And Valerie just completely deadpan said, I have no ill will toward her, but if she decides to stay in Belarus for the rest of her life and not come anywhere I am, that's fine by me.
Yeah, I know. You know, you got to admit, Valerie showed a lot of class because she, I think it was 3 times that she had athletes. And I remember Jessica Ennis in 2011. I was sitting with her mom on the bus going back to the Adidas hotel. And I just wanted to tell the mom how nicely her daughter had handled. I knew the athlete was dirty. You know, I mean, and we waited 5 years, you know, and it would break my heart. I remember Kathy Butler, the Canadian who competed for the UK for a bit, showing me one time on a sheet of paper. I think she lost $30,000 one year because that Russian athlete, who I won't even give her name, who had done the EPO. And that's when a lot of it became very human to me, you know. It was just like, dear God, what are these people, you know, it's
Jenny,
people's lives.
Not that you know well, Jenny Meadows reckons that she has lost $150,000 to drug cheats because, you know, she said you get the medal 3 years later or 5 years later, but you've lost, you never get the bonuses in your contract for winning the medal. You're not in a position to negotiate higher fees or higher sponsorship because you're the champion. Because you weren't the champion at the time, even though you know really you were.
Yeah.
So she and Jenny was not a superstar of the sport, so that was a lot of money to her.
Yeah. No.
An amazing thing is that she's not bitter at all about it.
No, I like Jenny. She's pretty amazing. Well, dear sir, we have come to the end of our time for Athletics Chat number 8. I think we've covered a multiple number of subjects. Thank you for your suggestions today. Enjoy the inspiration games. We'll be talking about that next week. And I will see you next Monday. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Indeed.
All right, Stuart, have a great week. Thank you again. This is Larry Eater with Stuart Weir. This is Athletics Chat from RunBlogRun, numero 8. Talk to you soon. Hey, sports fans, Larry Eater, RunBlogRun. This is Athletics Chat 8. And that's me in San Jose, Larry Eater, and Stuart Weir in Oxford, England. Today we talked about Bianca Williams and the Black Lives Matter movement and how Bianca was stopped in the UK and pulled out. The diminutive 5'4" British athlete was pulled out of the car by 4 or 5 large British cops, and a 3-month-old baby was in the car. Pretty crappy. We also talked about Dina Asher-Smith and the issues she's had with being told that clothes may be a little too expensive for you, or asked if she was helped when she would go to a nice event. I also threw in the stuff over here about WNBA club in Atlanta being chastised because apparently they claim Black Lives Matter was anti-Jesus and anti-Jesus. They just don't like Jesus being represented as a white European. He's not an Albert Dürer drawing when he was Middle Eastern and a different color skin. And I talked about our friend AJ Felice, who I identified wrongly as African-American. He's from Trinidad, and he got a nice used BMW and was pulled over by the lovely gendarme in California a few times for driving while black, which is crap. And as a coach, I saw that too, and I had to talk to my athletes about that. Didn't like that. It disgusts me. It embarrasses me. Track and field is an inclusive sport. It's where a lot of kids learn to deal with, to meet with people, and to know that people who are a different color skin, different religion, and things like that are not the same when you're handing a baton around the track or you're working out and doing repeat 200s. It's kind of cool. It's life lessons. That's what I love about this sport. It's influenced me for 46 years now. You know, I never regret any of the experiences I had in high school, college, or coaching. They're my favorite. Some of my favorite things to do, besides having my son, being the father. Probably the only other thing that I love as nearly as much as was being a coach. And someday I'll do that again. Anyhow, digress. But today was a lot of fun. Stuart's always a blast. And we talked about the cost of the Zurich Inspiration Games, which should be fun, 9 tracks. And the guys at Swiss Timing are to put it all together. So that should be a lot of fun. And then we talked about London Marathon. We don't think it's happening. Some of our favorite athletes, you're going to have to listen to it to enjoy it. But this is Larry Eater doing the epilogue for RunBlogRun's Athletic Chat 8. Goodbye for today.